We're live.
We're live. It's Senate Appropriations, February 19th, I think. And we're here to talk about the fiscal year 26 budget with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and any of the other folks you brought with you, and then let you know everybody around the table.
I do, but if it's okay, can we just take a quick minute
yeah.
to go around the table?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And welcome to Washington District.
Bob Norris, Franklin County, and the town of Elberg and Grandisle.
Okay.
I'm Rich Westman, Memorial District. I have one town in Franklin. Pleasure.
I'm Andrew Perksick with the Washington District, which includes Stowe, Braintree, and Orange, outside of the county.
Jenny Lyons, Chittenden Southeast, and I won't list them all.
That's probably a good idea.
Pat Brennan, Grand Isle County, and Colchester.
Phil Baruch, Chittenden Central.
Great. I'm Lindsay Curley, for the record. I'm Lindsay Curley. I'm the Secretary of Commerce and Community Development. My residence is Middlesex, Vermont. So I had a close trip here today. I'm here today with the ACCD, Agency of Commerce and Community Development leadership team. And we're here to present our FY26 budget. I have Dan Dickerson here with me, and Dan's going to be sitting in the chair for the duration because he built our budget. So I'll turn it over to him in a few minutes, but I'll just do a little table setting as the start. So our agency consists of 3 departments that are all actively engaged in generating revenue for the state's general fund. We have the Department of Tourism and Marketing, which is led by Commissioner Pelham over here. And she leads a team of 14. And this department is responsible for preserving the Vermont brand and marketing the state as a premier destination to visit, work, and live. We have the Department of Economic Development led by Commissioner Goldstein, who's right behind me. And she leads a team of 28 that are focused on business recruitment, retention, and expansion. Their work includes site location assistance, policy advocacy, and connecting businesses with resources for permitting, incentives, and funding. We have the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is our largest department, led by Commissioner Alex Farrell over here. And there are 43 full-time employees and seasonal staff in that department. And they coordinate and implement the state's housing policies, support housing providers, and promote the production and preservation of affordable housing. As well, this department oversees the Division for Historic Preservation, which has oversight and safeguards Vermont's historic sites and structures. And then we have the Division of Administration, and this team is a team of 17 that provides legal, financial, policy, communications, and administrative support across all of our departments in the agency. Deputy Secretary Tate Brooks manages the day-to-day operations in addition to his broader role as the Deputy Secretary. And joining me today is, as I mentioned, Dan Dickerson. He is our Administrative Services Director, and he led our budget development process. So he ensures the financial oversight of our agency. ACCD has a dedicated team of 102 employees, but our work extends beyond the agency. We do not undertake it all alone. We rely on strong partnerships statewide to be the boots on the ground. That includes regional development corporations, regional planning commissions, downtown organizations, municipalities, housing, nonprofits like VSHA, VHFA, VHCP, chambers of commerce, educational institutions, and other state agencies. So with that, I'm going to do a really high top of the budget overview, and then Dan's going to do a deeper dive and get into the ups and downs, and then the commissioners will get in the chair and take you a little bit into each of the department budgets.
Great.
So our proposed total budget is $105 million, which is composed of $63.4 million in base funding, and that is made up of 32% of that is $20 million in federal funds. And then we have $27 million or 43%, which is general funds. 21% comes from special funds, and then 8% is interdepartmental transfers. Then we have $6.8 million that we are proposing in new base initiatives. And what that is made up is 4.3 million for the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, or VHIP, which hopefully you've heard of by now. Commissioner Farrell will elaborate on that. 2.15 million for the Manufactured Home Improvement Repair Program, again, in Commissioner Farrell's department. And that's a program that repairs manufactured homes that have fallen into disrepair, trying to keep people from becoming homeless, keeping their homes worthy of occupancy. And then we have 350,000 to make our international business development program permanent, ensuring that we remain competitive in attracting global investments. And you'll hear from Commissioner Goldstein on that, and she'll provide further detail. We are also proposing 41.6 million in one-time requests, and I'll go through what makes up that 41.65 million. 15 million is for Rental Revolving Loan Fund, a program that VHFA has run and has been very successful running. So we want to put 15 million there. Another 15 million also to VHFA for the Middle Income Home Ownership Program. We're proposing 9.1 million for an Infrastructure Sustainability Fund. So this would be a new program that would enable us to help municipalities build out much needed infrastructure that would help us bring housing online. 2 million for the Brownfields Revitalization Fund. 300,000 to support 2 existing limited service housing positions, which Commissioner Farrell will talk about in a few minutes. And then finally, 250,000 for the Vermont Professionals of Color Network to continue technical assistance, workforce development, and business support for BIPOC entrepreneurs. At this time, I want to turn it over to Dan to take a deeper dive into the administrative division's budget and take you through the ups and downs.
Secretary, are you going to
Yeah.
talk more about the Infrastructure Sustainability Fund
Oh, yes. In fact,
later? Because I have just wanted to know more about it, but maybe that's
yeah,
already going to be
does it
covered.
make sense when we get to Alex? But we can talk a little, I can,
No, we can wait for the.
yeah, you want to do that? Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, sounds good.
So before bringing the commissioners up, I just want to touch really quickly on the administration division. As Secretary Curley noted, the day-to-day is run by Deputy Secretary Brooks. We have the quote-unquote ups and downs for the division. We are adhering to the 3% general fund growth guidance put out by Department of Finance and Management. Within that, we have a couple of new contracts that we're going to take on. We were able to find some savings to make that happen and then operate within the 3%. And then 2 notable things. One is for at least FY26 and possibly 1 or 2 additional years, we have to, within the admin budget, cover the annual integrity fee that's due to the U.S. Department of Treasury to keep our EB5 center active. It must remain active because there are still some cases that are being litigated, and until those are closed out and finalized, we have to keep the center going. So we're going to cover that fee from the admin budget. I believe it was previously covered by the Department of Financial Regulation, and so it's shifting over to us. And then the other notable item is we have an ongoing grant with the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, an annual grant. In FY25, that grant totaled 260,000. We're proposing an increase to 275,000, and that was something that was requested by the SJF, and we went along with it. So that's really all that's moving in the admin budget. Without any questions, I think we'll turn it over to Commissioner Pelham to go through tourism and marketing.
Does the increase to the SJF is 25,000? What is the full amount these days?
It would be in 26, 275,000. In the current year, it's 250,000.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Heather Pelham for the record. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing. I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you folks. We did not have a funding ask this year, so I'll just take a little bit of time to just give you some high-level updates on the department. As was mentioned, we are a staff of 14. That does include 2 limited service positions that are paid with federal funds. That is thanks to a very significant federal funds award that we received coming out of COVID for recovery and travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation. It was $10.4 million. That's over double our normal budget. So we've been spending the last couple of years spending that down, got these two positions. But it really has framed all of our work in terms of what we can do to support visitation to the state. So you'll see on the next slide, just some context for what we're talking about here. We were able to do an economic impact study in 2023 and can now see that we have 15.8 million visitors who come to the state in a year, and they spend $4 billion on everything from lodging to food and beverage to cultural activities and so forth. And it's really spread out throughout the state. We now can see that on the county level, which we have all those details on our website, but just so folks really think about the way that the impact of tourism is spread out throughout the state. It also brings in, this is just direct spending, so we're not talking about indirect supply chain expenditures or induced from wages, just the direct impacts, and it's also $282 million in taxes. You think about how that helps, everyday Vermonters, that's about the equivalent of $1,000 per Vermont household of taxes that are coming in from our visitors. And visitation supports 10% of our workforce, over 30,000 Vermonters.
How do you separate the visitors from all the other economic activity happening?
In terms of how the model works to do the economic impact. We use tourism economics. They do this for states all over the country. They look at visitation numbers, they look at tax data, they look at rooms and meals tax, they look at visitor center traffic, basically any and all data that we have that would separate visitors from residents. And then they use a model that they did customize for Vermont specifically to be able to come up with those numbers. And then we can look at day visitors versus overnight visitors and so forth. So what do we do to support that level of economic activity? There's basically 4 parts of the work that we do: destination marketing, destination development, relocation marketing, and then the chief marketing office. So for destination marketing, it's pretty much what it sounds like. Our job is to keep Vermont top of mind to folks who want to visit here. It is a very competitive business in terms of encouraging visitation. So we've definitely done as much as we possibly can do with this federal funding, including supporting development of creative assets like new videos that we have created now, that we were able to put into market this summer. We were able to achieve almost 16 million views of those videos. They're over 3 minutes long. So if you think about spending time with the brand and being able for us to tell that story, we've been able to use these federal funds to really invest in assets we can use going forward. We're talking about, over 200 million impressions with folks to try and get people to think about coming to Vermont. That's really fueling that almost 16 million visitors who come. We will not be able to sustain this going forward. And I would say that goes to the next tranche, destination development. So we've really thought about these federal funds. Yes, we want people to come this season, this winter, and so forth, but how do we really think about promoting just all the businesses, or really helping all the businesses that make up our tourism infrastructure going forward? So we have been in the midst of a destination development strategic plan. We are doing a visitor survey to really understand what is the profile of all the visitors who come here. We're doing a BIPOC visitation strategy so we can make sure that our visitors are diverse and everyone feels welcome when they come here. We're doing other market research. We've also been able to fund some workforce development programs that are directly related to the work that we do. So we were able to help set up a hospitality management certificate program at UVM. We've been able to work with the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance to do some skills building workshops for trail builders, bike mechanics, and ski techs to really support the outdoor rec part of our world. And then we're also doing an economic impact project around the local effects of investments in outdoor recreation. So when a community does put money behind increasing their outdoor rec opportunities, what does that really mean on a local level for that impact and how they do that? So I've put a toolkit together for that. We also were able to do a grant program to help some of our local partners on the ground with projects that would really help transform their destination going forward to increase visitation with 1.5 million of what we received. Again, try to keep it high level. The next part of what we do is relocation marketing. So thanks to base funding that we received 2 sessions ago, we've been able to set up our GROW program, which is grants for relocation outreach work. So this is really thinking about we're not just promoting Vermont as a place to visit, but as a place to live. What does that take? We've learned over the years as we've done this on a volunteer basis that it really does take a one-on-one level approach. So we were able to set up a grant program where we can provide basically capacity funding to organizations to do both relocation, which is really taking the leads that we receive from Think Vermont, and then they can provide that one-on-one concierge level service, and then also to do retention activities. So it's not just getting people here, it's making sure once they're here, they feel part of their communities, they feel like they can be engaged. And so we have, they overlap. We have 13 grantees altogether. There's 10 of them doing relocation, 10 of them doing outreach. One of our grantees is the Vermont Professionals of Color Network, so they are available to all the regions. And in the first year of the program, we had 50 families come, about 100 Vermonters. Basically, most of this year has really been getting that capacity up. We have not been doing any paid marketing behind this, but we will be launching into that this year. So I hope to be able to see that pipeline really improve in the next year, but we wanted to make sure we had the infrastructure of the grant program set up first. So exciting work there. And then finally, I know we have a lot more to talk about, but the Chief Marketing Office is also part of the Department of Tourism and Marketing. It's a staff of 2. And they serve as a resource for the entire state government enterprise. But basically, they do their best to provide marketing and communication support to other state agencies when they have public engagement or marketing or outreach projects that they are tasked with, so they can help them with either correct usage of the Vermont brand or contracting or procurement support to get outside expertise to help agencies do that work. They've also been doing a lot of work in the accessibility space to make sure that all communications that the state puts out are able to easily be translated, are in plain language. How can we meet our obligations under ADA to make all state websites accessible by 2026? And otherwise creating templates and supporting communities of practice for communications folks in the rest of the state government enterprise who are tasked with these type of projects. That's a real quick overview of what we do.
Great, yes, Senator Watson.
I have questions.
Yes.
About the GROW program.
Okay.
What guardrails are there on that program to provide any check on, like, that these families would not have moved here but for this money or support, and or yeah.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
they're not getting any money.
It's
Oh, okay,
different,
it's
it's
not-
different than the
Yeah.
Not the remote,
relocation,
it's
not the
remote
remote.
worker
No.
program,
which didn't run through
No.
your office, ran through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So this is grants that are going to organizations like Montpelier Alive or Green Mountain Economic Development Authority, or, there's they're depending on, the Rutland Economic Development Chamber. They're going to fund staff capacity at the local organizations who are doing this work anyway to help folks when they raise their hand and say, I'd love to move to Vermont, but they were doing it on a volunteer basis, which was unsustainable. So these grants help them not only provide that level of service when people say they want to move here and need to find childcare or a job or so forth.
so it's not paying people to move here. It
No.
is paying organizations that are supporting people
Yes.
who.
Already moved here mostly.
Yes. Some of
Okay.
it. Yeah. So it's.
Okay.
Sometimes we've seen that it takes about 4 months for someone to move here. Sometimes folks will contact a local organization when they already have already received a job offer and they're trying to figure out, where do I find childcare, or where should I live, or whatever questions you might have as a new resident. Sometimes there's a conversation that goes on for years at a time. So the fact that we now have a formal grant process means that we do get reporting from them on a monthly basis. So we are tracking what that sales funnel is, basically from prospect to engage to actually moving here. There are details of that in our full budget narrative that you can see, and I'm happy to.
And what's the total program budget? It's 350 up. So what was the total?
So it was 700,000, and we want to bump it up a little bit next year because there are a few gaps. We don't have every corner of the state covered. So we'd like to be able to get a few more grants to local organizations to make sure that we can service those leads anywhere in the state.
And the remote work or relocation program shut down. In fact, I think the last funds is in our reversions. We're cleaning out that line.
Sorry.
Well, Tulsa, Oklahoma, you know what they've done, right? When they heard what we did the first time, they started handing out $50,000 and they built a whole building for, provide housing for people, and they're still doing it. It's just amazing. So some places can do that. I understand. We're a little different from Tulsa.
Town attraction is very competitive, I'm not gonna lie, you know?
Yeah.
Good work, our Vermont companies need workers, we need to make sure that we're putting ourselves out there, so.
Yep.
You know, we've gotten a lot of good press over the years in terms of our support for new residents. This is what we found to be most successful, was really making those connections on a local level to, you know, help people make that final decision, and then, like I said, to make sure that they feel welcome once they're here and we can actually retain them.
Thank you.
Any other questions on tourism and
Oh,
marketing?
no.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
for-
information.
Thank you for the
It's
opportunity.
great that you're fully funded. You don't have many people come in here and want zero. but
I know, well, I'll say that,
But that's
thanks
only
to the
gonna be
federal
one-
funding,
That's just one more year.
yeah, it will be expended by this fall, so tell you all the great, good work we're doing, so next year you can help us continue that. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldstein?
Good
Welcome back.
afternoon, Joan Goldstein. Nice to meet you, and nice to see you again. We're a department of 28 people, and that includes our limited service positions that were funded by ARPA. And we do a variety of programs that are all meant to grow the economy, like grow businesses, relocate businesses, and create businesses. Variety of programs, I won't go over all of them, but there's some highlights on this page that talk about what we did with the ARPA money. We had $50 million, and we distributed to 155 different projects throughout 14 counties. These projects were for municipalities, for infrastructure, but also were for nonprofits and businesses in the arts and entertainment and accommodation and food service businesses. So the industries that were most severely impacted by the pandemic. A few other data points on here. We have Brownfields State Fund. We're asking for $2 million in one-time money. So far, since 2021, we have asked for 21.9 million. We put that to work very readily. There are many contaminated sites all throughout the state of Vermont, and we've leveraged that money with private development, either private for-profit or nonprofit, or municipalities that are redeveloping for housing or for business creation. And so this is very much in demand, very much on top of our agenda for one-time funds. The other data points don't have anything to do with what we're asking for today. This is just Vermont Training Program. We currently fund 50% of the cost of training for businesses that need to train either new employees or incumbent employees. And we have a VEGI program, which is the Employment Growth Incentive. And so far, since its inception, we've incentivized 1.1 billion in capital investment. It incentivizes not just capital investment, but also job creation. The ask this year in terms of base funding is for international business development. Our international business development is twofold. We help Vermont companies expand internationally. We get STEP funding, that's a SBA program that helps businesses attend trade shows, get translations for their websites or their product materials, one-on-one consulting at times, if they have customs, information they need to comply with. So that takes care of kind of the export-led. But just as important is the foreign direct investment, or FDI, people call it for short. And that is where we'll have international companies that want a U.S. foothold, and why not have them consider Vermont, right? And so far, you've given us one-time money a couple years, like 2 years in a row, or I think it was like 3 years ago, and then we got a little bit more last year. And that was for a Canadian in-market representative. Why? Well, because it's a big market, and we don't want to waste a lot of time chasing after.
In-market meaning
In market, like in Montreal. So there's a consultant there who will target expanding businesses, and those businesses may be interested in Vermont. I mean, we have stiff competition with New Hampshire and New York, who also have in-market representation. So we think that that's a great idea, because what's been happening is they're able to target who we should be talking to. So they'll take like 500 names and then gets whittled down to maybe 10 names that are serious, and then 4 names that we're currently looking for property for them to locate. We want to do that elsewhere. We want to do that in Europe. We want to do that in Asia. There are opportunities all over the world, but we've never had the wherewithal, and rather than coming back for one time, let's just have a program that's meant to expand our international, our ability to take some of these businesses in. They're interested in Buy America. Many of them establish a U.S. foothold because they want U.S. government contracts, especially for DoD, for aerospace, that's the like. So that is the ask for base.
Senator Washington.
So that's on top of what we're doing in Montreal now.
Yeah, so the candidate, that's a great question. The Canadian money will run out probably in November of 26, because it was 150,000 that we got last year. So this would be, we want this to include Canadian and everywhere else. So this would be just, we wouldn't be coming back for one-time money, is the idea.
It's a total 350, not 350 on top of the
Correct.
contract with the Montreal. And
Right, like in the past, it was.
contract work? Or it's not like
It would be primarily contract work, because there are consultants who would target the right people. They would also tell us, like, is this a worthwhile trade show to attend? Who else is going to be there? Are some of the targets going to be there? Should we have a trade mission? Maybe we bring US companies, Vermont companies to the show. So there's a lot that goes into it, and the only way is really to be in that market. Sorry, go ahead.
So just because I'm a little slow. So it's 150 because that is what we did in Montreal, and then 200 it would be, the 200 would be new.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like the rest of the, and also permanent, like this is for base, so that we're not continuing, yeah.
You're not hired, this isn't, you don't need an FTE for somebody just to focus on the work. You're gonna do this with the people you have.
The people we
these
have,
contracts out.
correct. That's the way we envision working it, so.
Did we get a bill introduced today about a trade mission to Ireland?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
I'm very excited about it. 3 appointees from the governor,
Okay.
3 from the Senate, 3 from the House, just to promote Vermont, Ireland.
Ireland is a natural, I think, for,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarity in terms of agricultural economy and also high-tech. And tourism, yeah. But I didn't know about the.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah, so that's.
Mr. Pro Tem and a member of the Committee on Committees appointed themselves.
You're a step ahead of us.
I was trying to get on the committee on committees.
So that's the one increase in base, for a programmatic increase, and then the $2 million for Brownfield Revitalization Fund, as I mentioned before. This gives a little bit more detail. We've done 42 projects, enabling 706 housing units, 831 jobs, and leveraged over $300 million in other funding that went into the projects. So some examples: there's a Rutland Hotel going up. We've done it everywhere: Burlington, Barrie, the southern part of the state. We're all over with that. There are so many contaminated properties in the state, so it's a great program to get that, a catalyst to get it redeveloped. The other one-time ask is for Vermont Professionals of Color Technical Assistance. We did that, I think, 2 years ago. We got an appropriation for them, and they've been doing their work, and I think that's going to run out probably just in time for the new fiscal year. And so we thought we'd like to continue with that expenditure. The BETA Business Disaster Relief Fund is really a redirection of the BGAP money that was appropriated in the E-Board meeting. Forgot when now, but probably over the summer.
For the flood.
It was $7 million, and we don't expect that we'll be spending all of that. We're winding it up as we speak. And so we want to just transfer $2 million to BETA so that they could do a disaster recovery loan program, so that they're right there. We expect there'll be more disasters. Why not have something at the ready so that we're not shuffling and trying to create a grant program on the fly. And they could be patient with them. You know, they'll determine kind of the terms, but.
So this would capitalize 2 million at VEDA programs.
Yes. Then I think that was it for our asks, and then I just have additional program spotlights just for those of you not as familiar with our programs. I mentioned Veggie before, that's the business growth incentive. So, you know, when you take each year how much we pay out away from the additional tax revenue, there's 1.4 million in net new tax revenue just in last year's accounting. And then TIP, of course, very much in discussion this year because we're asking for a derivation of TIP to appeal to smaller rural communities. Most of the TIPs are done in large communities. They have large staffs. They're able to, you know, delineate a district of tens or hundreds of parcels in the case of some of the Burlington ones. This is like, let's scale that back and give the opportunity for a smaller town to do a housing project, let's say, or get infrastructure needed. So that is part of the housing proposal that we've pitched. The economic assistance was the ARPA funded. The $50 million was obligated by the end of December, and we're, you know, spending down, I think 40%. Is that agency-wide 40%? I think, or is it just 40% has been spent down? We have a monitoring team. Those are the limited service people to go out and call on the individual projects, find out about their progress. And the other program that's interesting, a lot of people don't know about, is our Apex Accelerator. These are folks that are situated around the state. They're 3/4 funded by the federal government and 1/4 by the state government, and they help businesses get federal and state contracts. And for many small businesses, this is a great, could be their only line of business, at least at first. And so they've been able to help them procure 282 million in federal and state contracts. And that's like AOT and also BGS contracts. 241 businesses were awarded. So it's a very great thing for small businesses. Did I pass over something? Training program, as I said before, and STEP is also part of our international group. And the Northern Border Regional Commission, they've been able to, it's federal, it's been a very helpful program for infrastructure. And each year has been increasing, and I think we just got word so far that it's increasing again. We don't actually receive the funds, so you won't see it in the budget. What you'll see is capacity money that we get from the feds to pay for a person. Because what we do is solicit applications, we prioritize them, we decide who should we recommend to get the funding. It's been very, very useful. So it just gives a flavor of what we're about.
Why do you have the NBRC? That doesn't. Why do you have that on? Northern Border Regional.
Yeah, the Northern Border Regional Commission, because it funds infrastructure and economic development, and we prioritize them and make recommendations to the governor, and then they fund it. It doesn't hit our budget.
So you prioritize the applications?
Yeah,
go to the,
and our department.
Do you help them write their applications too?
Well, there's a whole team. It's like a sort of a multidisciplinary team to help rate them and, you know, decide who gets
helps them put together their
application. Oh, who helps them? Yeah, a variety of people. I think READY, the Rural Economic Development Initiative, I think it's called, out of VHCB, has helped some small towns. Mm-hmm. RPCs, I think, are helping, RDCs, and also we've got the one limited service position that's funded by NBRC that helps, as well as one of our business support staff that helps.
How long has that been happening?
That's been happening since, I mean, I joined the agency in 2015, and there used to be like $1 million, you know, allocation. Now it's up to like 12. Yeah. Like it's grown each and every year, and it's gotten better and better in terms of the dollar amounts. I think for an economic development project, you can get $500,000, but for infrastructure, you can get, depending on if it's more than one type of infrastructure, you can get up to $3 million.
So you prioritize them and send them to the governor, and the governor sends them to
there's a whole council of the northern states, like New York and all the New England states.
All the northern borders.
Yeah. Okay. But you'll see in the budget that there's NBRC capacity money. I think that's what comes across, but And that pays for a position. It also pays for some of the RDCs who do some of the prioritization work of the projects in their region, so that we have that information.
Okay.
Ups and downs.
Yeah, I'll just touch on one piece of the mechanics in the DED budget, and that's in the special fund column, further down under grants, this 2.5 million. A couple of years ago, DED received a $5 million appropriation for rural industrial development. And then there was some additional law in the big bill, to sort of structure how that program would play out. And one provision allowed for funds to come back to DED if, let's say, development happened and then I believe the property was sold. So what we're anticipating is that some funds may come back. I don't think it's going to be this 2.5 million, but we sort of budgeted high, and if it ends up high, then we have the spending authority. So I just wanted to flag that that was there because it's a relatively big number. Other than that,
And then just to refresh too, this was money because like there isn't enough industrial space, like, so we may find a business that wants to locate, but we just can't find a vacant 20,000 square foot building. So we thought this grant program would go to the RDCs to help them with either pre-development or development costs to get these places ready. And that could also be coupled with NBRC money, it could be coupled with, you know, whatever other funding sources. And so far we've approved about half. We've approved half, and we closed on our first one like 2 weeks ago in Wilmington. And as soon as that property gets resold, we have an interest, it'll come back so that we could then do that again, so that we have like a funding
It'll
mechanism.
stay within the rural.
Yes.
development.
Yes.
Other than that, on the general fund side, we stayed within our growth construct. You do see the 350,000 of new base funding in there. On the federal side, we've got a one-time supplement for our federal brownfield funding program. And so that'll live in the budget in FY26, and then, you know, once it gets spent down, it'll fall out either in 27 or 28.
Is that a match requirement?
No, it's a separate grant that we applied for federal to supplement what we have.
And then on the interdepartmental transfer side, we had some legacy spending authority that we're dropping out for. It was $1 million for the Newport Development Program. That was to help them bounce back after the ED5 issues. Those funds have been obligated and spent, and so we don't need the spending authority in the budget. And that's
You
it.
spent it this year, 25, you spent it in 25.
I think we spent the last tiny little bit in 25, but most of it was spent in prior years. We still had this $1 million sitting in our books.
Okay. Any questions for the commissioner? This commissioner, we have a lot of commissioners.
Okay.
Brian, thank you.
Thank you very much.
No?
Okay. No, that's okay. All right. Hi, everybody. For the record, I'm Alex Farrell. I'm the Commissioner at the Department of Housing and Community Development. Nice to see familiar faces here. So I can dive right in. I'll start with our structure. So on the front side there, you probably saw we hover around 45 folks between full-time and limited service positions. Some of these divisions you may be more familiar with are obviously, we have a housing division on our team. I'll flag that the mighty bureaucracy, which is the Vermont Housing Division, is only 3 permanent employees, 3 limited service employees. You'll see later on that we're seeking to make those 3 limited service employees permanent, which would bring our housing division up to 6 permanent employees. We have our Division for Community Planning and Revitalization. This is the team that works mostly with our municipalities and gets more involved in land use and zoning. So think state designated areas, downtowns, village centers, growth centers, and municipal planning grants. We have our largest division is the Division for Historic Preservation, which reviews historic properties that receive state or federal funding or are going through Act 250. I also want to flag, under the Division for Historic Preservation, we oversee the state-owned historic sites. And this year we had a record year, record attendance, and record revenue at our state-owned historic sites. It was a very exciting year for the sites.
What was the most visited state-owned historic site?
Well, it's always the Bennington Battle Monument, and that's our big earner.
That's easy to get.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But Plymouth Notch for Coolidge is a fan favorite too. Highly recommend if folks haven't been. It's basically the entire village is preserved as a museum. You can walk around. It's really neat. Anyway. The Vermont Community Development Program is a program through which we receive federal HUD funding. So think community development block grants, if folks are familiar with that program. There's also recovery housing funding in there, as well as that has seen some federal relief in terms of coronavirus relief funds. This is also the team that will receive the federal disaster recovery funding. So if you heard about the $68 million that the state is going to receive in CDBG DR funding, that's going to flow through the Vermont Community Development Program. We have to submit an action plan and coordinate with the recovery office by the end of April, April 21st. And so that'll give us a little bit more clarity. We're working through that right now with our agents. Okay, so I'm going to launch into the programs where we have some requests. I'm only going to touch on programs where we're seeking funding this year because we already have enough to talk about there. So why don't I start with VHIP, the famous VHIP. So I believe you all received an email with some PDFs on both VHIP and MER, so Vermont Housing Improvement Program, and the Manufactured Home Improvement and Repair Program. Oh, here we go. There's some getting passed around right there. So starting with VHIP, I believe folks are familiar with the program. Its goal is to rehabilitate rental units that have fallen out of the housing stock, create new units, repurpose structures, and convert them into housing. An exciting milestone for VHIP. We just crossed the 1,000 unit threshold in terms of the number of units funded through VHIP. Primarily, this has served households exiting homelessness for the past several years, particularly while we were funding this program through ARPA. Now that we've shifted to state general funds, we're able to administer the program fully as laid out in statute, which offers two options: a 5-year with a homelessness provision, or a longer covenant, so a 10-year compliance period, but in exchange you get relaxed requirements, so you rent at HUD fair market rent. So in either case, you're serving low-income renters, but just depends on your option. So
for 10 years.
That's right, for 10 years if you choose that option. So what we're seeking here, we've been operating this program with various tranches of one-time funding, and while that's been incredibly successful, it's somewhat operationally tough to manage. So we're seeking $4 million in base funding so that our partners and our team can have some predictability, and so applicants can have some predictability. We're also seeking $300,000, so that's why you see 4.3 million, 4 million for grants, $300,000 to fund 2 permanent positions. So we've got 2 limited service positions that operate this program right now. We'd like to make those permanent as we convert the program permanent.
So it's grants and 2 positions.
That's right.
And Senator Brennan.
Just a quick question. How long does a vacant unit have to be vacant until it's eligible?
Great question. Yeah, so this was a big concern, right? We didn't want folks to kick someone out. So
Right.
Yeah.
You get a $50,000.
Yeah, that's right. So we did build that in both the program design and in statute that, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but essentially it has to be vacant for a long time. If it's not, and you do have someone there and it doesn't currently meet code, the landlord has to provide another accommodation for that tenant. So they need to provide some alternate housing situation.
But they just do code compliance under the grant with the tenant staying in the unit?
Sometimes you can do that. You can keep the tenant there, and that's ideal, really. So you're not disrupting the life of the tenant. I guess.
Have you guys done any market analysis, like how many of these units are out there?
Yeah, so there are a couple ways that we've looked at this data. The housing needs assessment touches on this. So to give you a sense of scale, estimates are that at least 500 or 600 units from our housing stock fall into disrepair every year. I think that's a conservative estimate. It's also safe to say that there are probably tens of thousands of units that are either not code compliant or have some sort of habitability concerns that would benefit from these types of repairs. This is just focused on rental housing. Through CDBG, we have, you could say, sort of its mirror image with homeowners, through the homeownership centers we fund revolving loan funds for low-income homeowners to make those repairs. So, we've tried to, we've been asked, if you could get all the money in the world, what do you think you could go through and continue receiving applications and still create units with VHIP? It's hard to say. I think we could easily do $20 million a year. In theory, I don't know if we could actually administer that, because that would be a lot.
Yeah.
But that just speaks to the need. And it's also, it's not just bringing units back out of code compliance. It is creating units, converting from commercial spaces into residential. It's taking large farmhouses that are 6-bed, single family, turning them into 3 or 4 units. So it's been really successful at shifting a housing stock that doesn't fit our needs anymore and turning it into something that is more suitable to today's renters. All right.
Senator Watson.
That's okay. I assume that does not include things like remediation or weatherization or panel upgrades or anything like that.
That's right, Senator.
Yep.
Thank you for that. So,
Yep.
But the homeownership center goes through the practice of putting together a funding stack with the property owner to basically tap into all these. So oftentimes what you see is those are being leveraged.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Senator. All right, so I'll move down to MER now, the Manufactured Home Improvement and Repair Program. Another program that's been funded with tranches one time initially with ARPA, and then last year we funded it with $2 million of one-time general funds. These are investments in mobile home parks, both the parks themselves and the units to keep people housed. So with the $8 million that we've received in total since the inception of this program 2 years ago, it's become clear that of all the parks, we have a registry for the parks, so we know this universe very well. There is tremendous need out there. We've had requests far beyond funding, just like VHIP. We've had requests far beyond funding. The reason we're prioritizing manufactured home communities is because they've really been neglected for a lot of years, and because folks are in a precarious situation when you own your home, but it's on leased land, and so you don't have the benefit of the equity in your land if you need to borrow to make a home repair, et cetera. So the program has 3 components: home repairs, so directly repairing the homes that folks are, especially if folks are precariously housed. We're trying to look upstream of homelessness and keep folks from falling into homelessness. We're also looking at the health of the park itself and investing in the infrastructure, trying to make sure that roads, water systems, sometimes conduits going into units, trying to make sure that all the infrastructure of a park is kept up. Those investments often pair nicely with Healthy Homes, if you're familiar with the Healthy Homes program through ANR, to improve clean water and drinking water. And then the third component of this program is essentially expansion, so creating new lots. And this is helping certain parks to maintain their viability. The economics of maintaining a mobile home park are actually really tricky right now. So helping them to expand with a couple new lots has been really successful here. So again, with this program, looking for consistency and predictability, seeking $2 million in base funding for grants, $150,000 to convert one of our limited service employees into a permanent employee to operate this program in perpetuity. All right, we're going to move into the one-time asks now. Mr. Chair, I believe you had a question about this first program, the Vermont Infrastructure Sustainability Fund. Do you want me to give a quick summary first?
Just a summary.
Sure. So the goal here, so this was developed in partnership with the Vermont Bond Bank and the Agency of Natural Resources. And the gap that we are seeing is certain communities struggle to tap into certain existing infrastructure funds. Think of ANR's state revolving funds, which are great sources, but Either the communities don't necessarily have the funds to leverage the federal sources, or it's just too tricky to operate those. We also recognize that there's a gap in funding transportation infrastructure, so not just water and wastewater, but also say, if you need to run an access road into a site, or streets and sidewalks, which are often requirements of a lot of our zoning and designation programs. So this could help fund the municipality, who could then choose to partner with a developer to fund these items.
So right now, they would either have to get a commercial loan or they'd have to do a bond.
They'd have a bond, that's right. And this, part of the goal here is low interest rates, to just make this low-cost capital, patient capital for these municipalities. And you could sort of push out the repayment so that as the grand list benefits start coming online, then the municipality can begin the repayment.
So would this 9.1 create a revolving loan fund basically for these loans?
Exactly right. So that's right. So the Vermont Bond Bank would administer this. Municipalities would be the eligible entities to receive this. And as a requirement, any investments would have to have a direct tie to housing unit production. So you'd have to be able to demonstrate that it will result in housing units tied to the housing targets that we've put together. Okay, anything else on that before we move on? All right, so the next two programs I'm going to talk about, the first one on this page, are $15 million one-time expenditures to the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, VHFA, and their sort of twin programs. The first side of this is the Middle Income Homeownership Development Program. And so both of these programs, the Middle Income Homeownership Development Program and then the Rental RLF that I'm going to talk about in a minute here, they target folks hovering around the area median income, as low as 60 or 65% of area median income, up to 150% of the area median income, so 50% above area median income. The objective here is to complement other sources. We have a lot of other sources that help support the lower income, so 80% of area median income and below. This is to come in and complement that in mixed income developments. And the goal here is, of course, with the home ownership, to create ownership opportunities. This first program has two components. One is a subsidy to the developer to bring down what we know is sort of this high unit cost, the production cost. And there's also a subsidy to the home buyer on a sliding scale, depending on their income. Some of that portion upon sale of the property, or sometimes property owners might choose to relieve the obligation and just buy it off, comes back to VHFA that can revolve back into the program. Yeah, this has really achieved pretty impressive per unit costs, but what I want to flag here is this is part of a strategy to alleviate what we see as a lot of pressure right now on the lower income rental market. As we're trying to expand the affordable rental market, we also want to give folks opportunities who have the means to get out of that. We're trying to give them opportunities either through home ownership or to get into other rentals, market rentals.
Question.
Yes, so.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of this program, like the Missing Middle program, but I'm not
That's right.
sure how does that phrase relate to this program?
Thank you. That's a really good question, Senator. So we toss around the phrase missing middle. We've actually phased it out of this program because missing middle actually really refers to a design, a type of home, which is sort of an infill design. We've used it colloquially to describe middle income housing. And so VHFA and our team try to sort of phase out the usage of that terminology when we're referring to income ranges.
Because it's not a specific design, it's a model.
That's right. Okay. And a lot of these will actually fit that design type, because generally speaking, that design will serve middle income folks. But so with this, think townhomes, duplexes, quadplexes stacked that are dense and infill minded. Yeah, good. Thank you, Senator. That's a good catch. So the other half of this twin pairing, the rental revolving loan fund, pretty straightforward. This is a revolving loan fund to subsidize to provide low interest capital to the development of rental, just like a lot of other programs that we have. But this is again targeting that median income range between 65 and 150 AMI. And again, this fully revolves back. So these are just loans to the developer that comes back to the program. Oh, and I should flag this one. This program also achieved incredible per unit costs and create a lot of units with the one-time tranche that they received. So this next request here is of those limited service positions that we do have. So we talked about converting 3 of them into permanent for the programs we discussed before, MER and VHIP. 2 more we would like to extend another year, particularly work on a couple of initiatives. Specifically, some of those initiatives include our Homes for All. I hope some folks have heard of our Homes for All toolkit. Quick summary, that's a toolkit that was designed to basically be a textbook to teach someone who isn't a developer but wants to develop, whether it's an ADU or up to 4 units, a small scale infill development. So it will teach you how to get your permit, what's a pro forma look like, what does it look like to be a landlord, and then what are some designs you could potentially adopt.
It's a pretty new book. Was it just last year?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We did. We launched it last year. It was really cool because the team that developed it looked at 5 municipalities throughout Vermont and adopted designs that would fit sort of the image of most Vermont villages.
Yeah, I saw it. I thought it was well done.
It's been a great success, and so we want to continue that effort with 2 more phases. The next phase being a training cohort to now get on the ground, and these folks that are getting involved and have the toolkit that want to do some of the small scale development, actually doing some hands-on training with them and getting their skill set up. So
and this is a one-time because you're just going to extend these positions for another year, and then they would end.
We want to move the initiative forward through that training cohort, and then ideally we get it to the 3rd phase where we have designs that are provided to municipalities that they could choose to adopt as pre-approved designs. So developers can go and choose for them or just get their permit. The other part of this request is staffing for the numerous data efforts that we're undertaking, setting targets for state, regions, and municipalities, and then tracking that on a regular basis, which has been incredibly informative, but also is really labor intensive. The next program, again, is a program that's been around for quite a long time. It's been very successful, the Downtown and Village Center Tax Credit Program. One of the more successful state programs in terms of leveraging private dollars. So these are tax credits available for projects within our downtowns and village centers, just as the name would suggest. These could be upgrading a facade of a building, it could be flood resiliency improvements to a building, or it could be conversions of commercial space into housing. We've seen all of those uses and more. It's about 17 to 1 of what we see for every dollar invested through these tax credits. We see about a $17 private capital investment. So last year, the 4-ish million in tax credits that we administered saw 160 million private investment matched with that. And so during the pandemic, we were able to temporarily increase the cap. The annual cap is set at 3 million. We're able to offset the increased foregone revenue up to 5 million using federal funds. We're proposing this year to permanently increase that to 5 million because our annual applications tend to come in just over 5 million. So this would come closer to meeting the full demand. And I'll just flag this disproportionately benefits our smaller villages, because this is one of those funding sources that's really low barriers, easier to tap into. So our small communities don't have a lot of those. And so this is really good for those village centers.
And would this be a one-time?
This would be a permanent change. So this proposal would permanently decrease its foregone revenue. So it would decrease tax income by 2 million. I won't dive into all of these. We just wanted to list some of the studies and some of the reports that we've been putting out lately, just to touch on, and this isn't a full list, but just touch on some of the ways that that our work is informed and our proposals are informed by data and research, and we're supported by a great ecosystem of other experts. And so we partner with folks like VHFA, VHCD, Land Access Opportunity Board, and a lot of these. And so we've really been advancing a lot of initiatives through these sort of study and report exercises. So that said, maybe I'll pass it over to Dan.
Okay. So there are 2 pages of the ups and downs. I'll focus on the personal services area first. It's up on the screen. So on the general fund side, I just want to know, you just see the funding flow in for the 3 permanent positions that we're hoping to create from existing limited service positions. I think aside from just the general salary benefit pressures, we are seeing pressure from the fact that federal funding sources that do support many of the positions at DHCD have been pretty flat. And so as salaries benefits rise, those pressures also fall to the general fund. So in FY26, we're meeting that pressure that sort of, I think it's accumulated over a few years, and we've done a little bit of movement in intra-year, within a given fiscal year to address those. I think this budget sort of structurally solves that problem, at least for a little while. And we've done that by reducing IT contract costs. I'll note that a couple of years ago, we built in roughly about $500,000 when the whole state was going to go to Salesforce for a grants management system. That's since paused or halted. And so we are taking the steps within ACCD to go to upgrade our existing grants management system that a few programs use with our existing vendor, which means that the costs are much lower than.
Which program are you using?
It's run by a company called Agate, and the new version is called IGX. It's IntelliGrants. And so we have 2 programs within DHCD and 2 programs within DD that are moving to that new platform. We're using ARPA dollars for that. And then we have some one-time funds set aside to get a few additional programs potentially online onto that platform over the next year, hopefully. So that has reduced the need by a lot within our budget, and so we've taken that funding and addressed some of our salary pressures.
The vacancy savings increase,
That is, so in the past, we had budgeted roughly 5%, or I guess we had reduced costs by salary benefit costs by 5% for quote unquote vacancy savings. I think that's a bit high because permanent positions are generally filled within DHCD, or if they become vacant, they fill pretty quickly. And so I brought that down to 2%, which in effect increases cost pressures because we're budgeting less savings. And so that's just something that we were able to accommodate this year that I think sets us up more sustainably going forward. I just don't think 5% vacancy savings year over year is realistic.
See, it's listed as a cost, even though it's an increase, your decreased savings, I guess.
Yeah, we're decreasing savings, so yeah, it comes in as a cost on this document.
Yeah, okay.
On the federal fund side, you see a lot of decreases. That is because the emergency rental assistance program that has supported a lot of the limited service positions will be done starting October 1st of 2025. So, so 3 of those positions we're asking to be made permanent. A couple will fall under that one-time bucket of money that we're asking for. And then we have a few additional small admin buckets that we can draw from. But essentially ERA is done, and so we have to shift limited service position costs elsewhere or make those positions permanent for the 3 that we are. And then you see a couple of big sums for grants that the Division of Historic Preservation has received to improve a couple of state historic properties. Some of those costs come through on personal services, and then a bigger chunk of those costs come through under operating. But those are improving the old Constitution House to do some remote mold remediation, and then the Justin Morrow Homestead where we're doing drainage improvements. Going to the next slide, this is where we cover operating and grants. You'll see on the federal fund side the two big increases for those historic site grants. Other than that, there's not a whole lot big happening on the operating side. On the grant side, under general fund, you see the new 6 million for BHIB and MER to give those ongoing funding. On the special fund side, due to the most recent state revenue forecast, property transfer tax receipts are anticipated to increase. I think some of that is just from the Act 181 increase to second homes, I believe, or second, yeah.
Non-seasonal second.
Yes, sorry, yeah. And so some of that money will flow to ACCD that will then grant out to the regional planning commissions and to municipalities. So that increase is built in under special funds. Under federal, we had once again, some legacy spending authority that were dropping out because the funds have been spent. The big piece, which you see within the category BCDP, Vermont Community Development Program, there was 3 million of spending authority that we had in our budget for CDBG CV. That was the COVID era, basically boost to CDBG funding. Those funds have been spent, so we don't need that spending authority anymore. ERAP and homeowners assistance funds, it's the same story. Either the program's ending or we've spent the funds, and so we don't need spending authority for grants anymore. And then under interdepartmental transfer, for BHIP, we did get some one-time transfer from AHS of 1.5 million. Some of that went towards BHIP. Some of it went towards setting up the Homes for All program. So as we spend those funds down, we're dropping the money from our operating budget, or the spending authority from our operating budget. And then finally, the EVSC electrovoltaic support equipment. That's funding that we get from transfers. Well, I think we've gotten a one-time appropriation in FY25. We're getting a transfer from AOT. That's funding charging stations at multi-unit dwellings.
Is that Bronwyn's program?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cook.
In our FY25 budget, we had built in, I think, roughly 2.1 million of spending authority. But in reality, in the 25 budget, I think what we ended up getting allocated to us from AOT was 1.7. So we've reduced our spending authority to reflect at least FY25. And I think that's it for THCD, unless there are questions.
Not that I have.
Great.
Nobody else, thanks for your time. Thanks,
Thank you.
Secretary and
You're welcome.
Commissioner. Appreciate you coming in, providing all this information.
Thank you.